In this lesson, we will discuss autopilot limitations, managed nav limitations, non-precision approach limitations, and Cat 2, Cat 3 limitations. The minimum height for autopilot engagement on takeoff and go-around with SRS mode is 100 feet AGL. There is also an internal logic built into the system which prevents autopilot engagement until the aircraft has been airborne for at least 5 seconds. The minimum height at which the autopilot must be disengaged with Cat 1 displayed on the FMA is 160 feet AGL. For a straight-in, non-precision approach, the minimum height for use of the autopilot is the applicable MDA. Recall that the autopilot will automatically disengage at MDA minus 50 feet if an MDA is entered into the MCDU approach page and at 400 feet AGL if no MDA has been entered. For climb, cruise, and descent, the minimum height for autopilot use is 500 feet AGL. The use of the autopilot or flight director in open descent or descent mode is not permitted on approach, unless the FCU altitude is set to MDA or 500 feet, whichever is higher. Nav mode is approved for use in the terminal area provided GPS primary is available. High accuracy is displayed, and the appropriate RNP is checked or entered on the MCDU, or NavAid raw data is monitored. For non-precision approaches, the use of approach nav and final approach modes may be used, provided the autopilot or flight director is used, and GPS primary is available, or the approach nav aids are serviceable and manually tuned, and the raw data is continuously monitored during the approach. For a Cat 2 ILS approach, the minimum decision height is 100 feet AGL. At least one autopilot must be engaged in approach mode, and at least Cat 2 must be displayed on the FMA. If the approach is conducted without autoland, the autopilot must be disengaged at 80 feet AGL at the latest. The A320 is a fail operational system when both autopilots are engaged in approach mode and Cat 3 dual is displayed on the FMA. For a Cat 3 fail operational approach, the alert height is 100 feet. It is set by entering No into the decision height field of the MCDU approach page. The auto call-out system will then call 100 feet radio altitude. Below this height, a safe landing and rollout is possible, even with the failure of one of the required redundant systems. For Cat 3 without a decision height, the minimum runway visual range is 300 feet, 75 meters. If a decision height is required, the minimum is 20 feet AGL. If only one autopilot can be engaged, the approach capability is restricted to Cat 3 single. When Cat 3 single is displayed on the FMA, the A320 is considered a fail-passive system. This means that with the failure of one of the required redundant systems, the aircraft will not deviate significantly from the flight path or attitude, but the landing may or may not be completed successfully. Therefore, in the event of a failure, the autopilot must be disengaged and the aircraft landed manually. For a Cat 3 fail-passive approach, the minimum decision height is 50 feet. The autothrust must be used in either selected or managed speed. For Category 2 or 3 automatic approach, landing and rollout, the maximum surface headwind component is 30 knots. The maximum crosswind component is 20 knots, and the maximum tailwind component is 10 knots.